Welcome back, guys. How was lunch? Tasty? Did anyone get to vote for their meal? I didn't get to vote, but I was really keen. I had from the guys from Moke Dining. Thought they put on an exceptional spread there. Well, welcome back here to the National Restaurant Conference. Kicking straight into our next panel. This is one I've been looking forward to hearing about all day. So, we're talking here about how to manage multiple restaurants, so spreading your wings as it goes. Joining me on the stage here, Ian Curley, we've heard from before. Not Ben, apparently, but Ian. Yes, it's nice to have you back again, Ian. Scott Pickett from Pickett & Co. and many other brands, actually. So, Scott, we look forward to hearing a little bit more about your operations and what's going on at the moment. Scott Pickett Group is the overarching banner. And also Shane Delia from the Delia Group. Shane's just taken time out of his busy schedule across the road at Maha, jumped out to fit us in straight back into service. So I really appreciate having all you fantastic chefs on the stage. Please give them a warm round of applause. So we might, just kick the conversation off maybe with Ian, just talking about running multiple venues. And you were touching on a few really interesting subjects before in our session around looking after the staff and mentoring and grooming, and you talked about your week starts with you jumping around the country and going to a few different hotels. So what are you looking for in a good team member to drive the operations when you're not there?
I think basically now everything's come full circle. I think we've now realised that from a business perspective, after COVID, we're a lot more business focused now. We used to be able to get away with a lot more stuff, either, I wouldn't say abusing the staff, but the staff used to do a lot more hours and work a lot longer hours, I wouldn't say that. But now everything's now focused again with mental health and how you interact with the staff and what you're doing. I mean, we all know there's been a lot of press and stuff about underpayment to wages and all that sort of nonsense. It's like everything's business focused now. I get daily reports of how our business is going. It used to be, that'll be fine. As long as you charge $30 for a main course, we'll be fine. Now it's all down to the finite. And also you've got to look at your staff, like, they're expensive. They're expensive commodities, each of your staff. And it's like, when you're opening a restaurant, you've got to think to yourself, well, first of all, how much is the exec chef going to cost me, and how much is the sous chef? Then you've got all your other incidentals. I mean, these guys will tell you, like, nothing's cheap anymore.
Yeah, and an interesting point you make there about looking at growth from a team. You've got a budget for a team, right? You guys are probably the same. This is the concept of the restaurant. Now you could pay one rock star, but can they do all the hours for the whole roster? Or how do you spread that across? Scott, what do you look for when looking to build a team?
Yeah, look, I think the business model's really changed over the last 5 years. Even pre-COVID, it was really starting to shift, and whether that's a generational shift, that's an understanding, that's a mentality. For me now, we look at ways is, what's the new formula for restaurants to be sustainable and to hit your margin and your targets? And where it might have been, 5 or 8 or 10 or 12 or 15% bottom line, 20 sometimes in the weeks, wherever, as Kel said, all these costs are creeping up now. So how do we look at that, and what is the new recipe almost? Right, and so how do we look at, the items that we put on the plate, the amount of work, the amount of labour, what goes on behind the scenes. So don't compromise quality, but you look at how you can manage that kind of more, like a bit more effectively. And especially with inflation, everything's gone up. I mean, iceberg with fucking $7, $8. How do you put half an iceberg on a plate as a side dish plus garnish, and it costs you $6 or $7 to put that on the plate as a side salad? You can't. So, portion sizes, alternative options, secondary cuts of meat, maybe smaller portions, and really there needs to be a price rise in all the restaurants to actually, to actually keep moving forward.
Yeah, and especially, I guess, in a competitive food market like Melbourne, because you don't want to price yourself out of the market. Right? So there's that value conversation that kicks in.
Yeah, this is a long one that's been going on probably for 30 years. I've been in the industry. It's not about pricing yourself out of the market. Like I was in France in January for the Bocuse School. And really, what you pay in euros in a restaurant, you pay in Australian dollars, right? I was in London for a couple of days afterwards. What you pay in Aussie dollars, you pay in pounds. It should actually be, oh no, that's not inexpensive. I'm not paying $45 for that dish. It costs what it costs. It costs what it costs to put that food on the plate, for your overheads, for your marketing team, for your head office, for rents that have gone up, and for an increased cost of labour. So it's not that restaurants are trying to rip people off. We're actually trying to be sustainable business models, and if that means that the main course costs $55, well, that's what it costs. And in Europe, and I think, there's a very different mentality that, no one really whinges about the cost. Right? They appreciate the cost of fine product, of fine service, of fit outs, and the whole package, and then you get the bill, and then you leave.
Yeah, absolutely. That appreciation, I think. So knowing that what you're paying, fair product, fair price, for quality, right? Pitching to the right market, which would be really important. Shane, I know you've recently opened a couple more venues. What's the process that you go through in terms of that expansion? Is it something you set out to do and say, I want to have a great little empire and have north, east, south covered off? Or is it just sort of organically, something's come up and you've felt this is the right opportunity?
I think when opening venues, there's two sort of ways to look, right? It's about opportunity and assessing opportunity and what the market needs and where your skill base sits. But then there's also organic things that happen in your business that you need to just flex with. Like, I was in a fortunate position where we had a couple of buildings where I was the landlord, so I thought there was an opportunity there to look at restaurant offerings and we cater a product for that market. But then you look at opportunities like we've just opened Jada next to Maha now. Maha's about to celebrate its 15th year. We've definitely got a need for a drinks venue pre and post and for a bigger private dining room. So we then went out and sought a venue that could facilitate that need. So I think the best approach is to find the need, find the demand. That way you're minimising your failure rate instead of forcing something. If you're forcing something, there's passion involved, there's ego involved. Generally, when those two things are involved, there's a financial loss as well. So if you can find the need, build the service and the team to be able to facilitate that need, that's how we'll be looking at things moving forward. But to be honest, for us within the restaurants, the next 12 months are purely focused on redirecting our focus to operations, to culture, to skills, and not looking for expansion. I don't think now is the time for expansion, in my view. I think it's more about focusing on your core attributes and making sure they're really strong.
Yeah, and focusing on that, what you say there around the culture, the skills, to make sure, I guess, you've got the engine room running consistently before looking at more opportunities. Scott, question for you. So I know over the last couple of years you've accumulated some other well-known restaurants that are perhaps not doing so well. Long Grain, for example, where you felt, I think I can have a run at this. Was that I guess always a conscious decision for you to have multiple venues, or again,
No.
just opportunities sort of crept up?
No, I wish I just had one actually. No, look, I think as Shane said, it's really opportunity. And Long Grain was doing well, like up until COVID, and it's a great business. And I think really that was more John Van Handel, where he was in his life, and what he wanted to do after 15 years of Long Grain, kind of semi-retirement. That was just that opportunity that came along. And I think, look, we're in the same mindset as set too. I'm probably not going to do anything else in Melbourne. I'm kind of get done here, and I think that for us now, we've done the Conti, we've done Long Grain, we've done Chancery Lane, we've done Pickens. So we have 4 or 5 plus SBG catering and the production kitchen. We've had a massive 2 or 3 years while, in the kitchen sets we're doing our mise en place. We've been prepping for this to come out, and now I'd say that the financial fiscal market for the next 6, 12, 18 months is going to be tight, and we're the same thing. We're just going to get better now. Between now and next Christmas, there's a couple of overseas opportunities that I'm looking at, but now it's just about us getting better at what we do. Because we went to shotgun approach during COVID, and now we've got everything lined up, and now we just get better, train, and just find that 1, 2, 3, 4%, and just watch where the market goes a little bit, I think.
Yeah, really interesting. Ian made a point earlier about swimming in your own lane. So it sounds like you've accumulated a lot, but now let's do what we do really well and better than the competitors to stay in the game. Because that sustainability in business is what you want. Like sustainability in produce, farming, great, get it, but sustainability in business, you want to be here in 10, 15 years. Well done, Shane. That's quite a legacy as a restaurateur. Listen, Ian, thinking about managing multiple teams, right? You said in your opening comment there around looking at the data, finding and working out your plan. What are some of the tools that you use to keep an eye on your interstate teams plus your guys on the ground?
Obviously, everybody will tell you you're only as good as your team, but it's pretty much a whole complete opposite to how I was 30 years ago. It's like then you used to like wear as a badge of honour the amount of time that you spent in the kitchen and how hard you worked and if you could turn up after a hangover. But now it's kind of like it's no longer like that. You've got to like utilise your staff to their best ability, and you've actually physically got to make sure that they're in a good spot for them to get them to work. You've got to actually convince these kids these days that this industry is a really good industry to work in. You've actually got to like drive it home that this is a future. The problem is if you listen to the media and the doom and gloom that's around and how expensive it's going to be and businesses are going to go broke, it's like we've just gone through a pandemic where a lot of the restaurants were on their knees, and if it wasn't for things like Providor, for example, a lot of other businesses would have gone out. So we just thanks Bob. Thanks.
Absolutely.
Thank you. So you've got to turn around and say, look at our industry. Like I said, this is the best industry you can actually ever be in, because there's so much like scope that you can do. Like whether or not you want to work at a 4-seater or a 20-seater where Donald's going in Hong Kong, or you want to work at the Crown or the MCG or whatever it is. Of course, the scope is just incredible. So you just got to adapt for the people that are around there and just say, well, find the best people you can and work with them.
Yeah, and finding those people, as like we were saying, more importantly, skilling them, keeping them involved. Scott, how do you, or maybe a better question is, what sort of percentage of your week is spent mentoring or grooming or the time with your team? Because obviously you can't be everywhere at once.
Fucking most of it actually. I'm on the phone, on the emails from about 6 a.m. to 1 a.m. Look, I mean, my role's obviously changed over the years now. There's multiple venues. So I do daytimes kind of running the business, working in the business on. So I still have actually my office above Estelle. I've got my original office of 12 years. And then we've got a head office in Johnson Street, around the corner from Smith Street. It's got like 30 people in there. And I've got an office there, but I go there about twice a year. I leave the bean counters, the marketing, all the financial fuckers over there to do their job. And then I sit in my office, and then I just check on everyone, and I touch base. So really, the tree, or the sauce tree as I call it, right? The sauce tree is trained the chefs to do classical sauces out as your bases. Right, so chicken stock, fish stock, veal stock. Then there's a chef on the big veal stock, and then we go down to the fish stock, the chicken stock, and how we do. And it's all like, the tree is to how we go. So, my right-hand man being Stuart McVeigh, that's been with me for 8 years, a great help and understands the business, and then each one has an executive chef under him. And same in front of house, the GM, and then a kind of CEO. So I now bring my inner circle in a little bit closer over the years, so I go to 4 people now. And then night times I do a service 4, 5, 6, 7 nights a week, depending where I am or what I am. Now I do it on the outside of the bus. I white knuckle internally a little bit, but I can be a little bit intense sometimes. Now, like chef, we stand on the outside, so it's better for culture when I'm not in the restaurants as much, actually. So that's one thing we do.
I love how modestly you say that you can be intimidating sometimes. Surely not.
On occasions. Yeah, firm but fair, Glenn. I like to actually describe it for many years.
I love it. Thank you, Scott. Shane, so similar question for you. So how important is that team, that inner circle? What does that look like in your restaurant operations?
Yeah, I think creating an inner sanctum where there's transparency and accountability is imperative to any business's survival. I mean, any relationship survival is based on accountability, right? Whether it's personal relationships, friendships, partner, and holding people to account, not just behind closed doors, but amongst your leadership group, is really important. I mean, we've got structured meetings where it's once a week with our ops team, then they break down into for their teams, and we set the target of the ops meeting, monthly finance meetings to be able to make sure they're accountable to the budget. But apart from that, everybody knows I don't run those meetings. At our weekly ops meeting, the teams, the front of house manager, head office manager, head of wine, everybody needs to come to those meetings. They know what their agenda items are. They have to report in with that, report in with live data, understand how we're tracking, recalibrate. So we start at the beginning of the meeting with our minutes, we report back on what we were supposed to achieve. We make sure we've achieved them. If we haven't achieved them, then the team has to be accountable as to why they haven't. And if they haven't, it's not a reason to be ashamed of or to hide. It's not a whipping session. We're there to support each other and find out how we can all play a part to lift to get to where we need to be. Because if one part of the team is falling, we're all falling. And if one person's falling behind, we're never going to achieve what we have to achieve. And it could be a small goal. It could be, you know, we want to increase the amount of martinis served this week from 200 to 230. Well, that becomes the main focus, and we like to set weekly achievable targets that aren't going to blow the lights out, because 20 martinis sold every week over the month becomes a lot of martinis. But we know that becomes our main focus. We set 3 key focuses every week: one from food, one from beverage, one from service, and that's what we need to achieve, and we have to get there. So I think, you know, transparency, accountability, but like Scotty's saying, like what Ian's saying, holding your core team really tight, but not separating distance between you and the rest of the team as well. So showing that there's a strength and that there's a camaraderie and a respect for the senior management team, but then also building bottom up. I think a lot of the time we work from the top down. We think about getting that rockstar chef, that rockstar operator, and think that operator is going to filter through the business. It doesn't work like that. You need to build from the bottom up. You need to build from your most junior people, and the senior guys have to spend time with them. I mean, this weekend, Saturday night, I was running the floor at Jada at our cocktail lounge, you know, and we like to change up our leaderships. You know, we like to move people from kitchen to front of house, from accounts to reservations, you know, to make sure that everybody's cross-skilled. Because just because you're a bean counter, you understand the finances of the business, so that skill set should be able to transfer into reservations, because you understand how important that reservation is.
Yeah, bringing a different lens into the operations, right? Because like you say, a bean counter on the floor can actually maybe see something really simple and say, why don't we do it this way? Oh, never really thought about it. That achievable targets, I think, is a really good point there. Ian, so with your team, what kind of targets do you set with either your exec chef team or Inner Circle?
Well, luckily we've got a couple of restaurants that are vegan or vegetarian, so we don't have the higher food costs for a lot of it, which is good. So what we do with that is they achieve less food costs, but they work harder on their labour costs, so they've got to work a little bit harder. Because surprisingly, making a carrot taste good is actually quite difficult. So what happens is we don't have to do the eye fillet and all that, but you just got to say you set a budget, and like the saying, because everybody's now all about bean counters and stuff like that. You never used to worry about the finance side of it. Now it's all about that. So you get their budget, and then if it's not at that level, you now have to sit down and say why and analyse it. But then we're in a situation where all of us boys here, like all of a sudden we're dictated to by the fish supply or the meat supply, and go up, everything's going up by 20%. And you can't go, well, you can't add that onto your menu straight away.
Yeah, the customers.
And the customers go, well, they're trying to rip you off. I don't know of any restaurant in Melbourne that's trying to rip off anybody. You know, they're just trying to survive. You know. So, yes, the argument has got to be, yes, prices have to go up, but it has to go up incrementally, and also you have to give value for money, you know?
And so some of the targets you said there, your teams are more around their labour efficiencies?
Yeah, absolutely. And also you'll notice now that, like, you know, the so-called top 100 restaurants, there are nothing in Australia anymore in the top 50. And that's a shame, because we do it really well. But also we're now focused on business as opposed to like awards and accolades and look at us type of thing. It's like we've had to knuckle down after COVID, you know, and get it sorted.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Ian. Scott, some of the early conversations today were around technology and efficiencies in operations. The team mentioned here looking at live data and interpreting something like that. I know you've got a team around you. Is the live data, is that something you personally dial into, or what's your viewpoint and how that impacts your multiple venues?
Yeah, that is completely actually. I suppose as we've opened multiple venues, we've looked at how the technology's kind of kept up and what we need to do. We've just gone to it, well, we've been spending the last 6-9 months moving our whole platform over to one called Power BI. Right, for example, that we've been working, you know, very closely. We brought it in for the Conti at Sorrento, so the team's been with about 2 years, and then that was trial run, and then we found out all the little errors, and then it goes in the SPG group, kind of really, I think from the 1st of May, whenever that is. And so now we look at that, so that's an app, that's live, that's fed, that goes into, so all the spreadsheets, right? So I've got a base food cost that I did at 0.7 years ago, and you know, that's going into the nickname Digger03, right? It was a very simple Excel spreadsheet I set up. There is days, there is a forecast, Because the thing you find is that like a lot of the young chefs that are coming through in executive chef or head chef positions, they're great cooks, but they don't know how to run a business. And if you overwhelm them with too much stuff, then they just get completely lost. And a lot of them, you know, they actually can't counter. They might not have been great at school. They could be dyslexic. They actually fell into kitchens because they weren't academic. So I run kind of two systems. We run a very, very basic one with them, right? That is simple to outstand and go, right, so there's your 20 suppliers, there's your covers, you know, that's the average head spend, you know, that's your target GST. So we start like that, and then we take them all the way through to Power BI. That gets done at the end of the night, the links with the, you know, with the FPOS, with the Micros, with the bank, and that's the kind of senior upper management, and that's on my phone that I can see live checks now as to how many's booked, covers coming through, the average spend, and then they do kind of a briefing, and so at the end of the night I'll get an email as well as Power BI. It gives me a snapshot on every restaurant, front of house, back of house, turnover, where we are for the day. So we're actually now down to daily, like Kelly said. You know, before you do your food costs once a week, maybe once a month, you have a stock take, it would take care of itself. Now we're actually down to the minute, the hour of the day, and it's daily wage cost, food cost, and beverage spend.
Again, that lifetime data, and you know, hearing you say, talk about the financial literacy of your team as well. And I think it can be really challenging sometimes, and I've worked with a range of head chefs that are running multi-million-dollar operations with very, very low financial literacy skills.
Yeah, they haven't been trained, they've gone through that.
Right.
You know, the head office team are great, but most of these people are actually been through university. They've got a skill set that's actually, for 4, 6, 8 years before they get to you, they've been trained in this. That's great, but how can they support, the young guys and the girls that actually could not, that aren't great with computers or aren't great at thinking about that? It's that they're great cooks, but how do we actually train them to run a great operation? And, the glory days, as Curly said, if you look back at Donovan Cook and Bloke and Philippa, Estes was a great restaurant, but in the 90s, their claim to fame was that they never actually costed a dish. They didn't give a fuck about food costs, but the food was great.
It was great.
Well, that was great, and that was good. And that was good in the 90s when, chefs were working 70, 80, 90 hours. But what is a new movement? What is a new recipe? And there is actually nothing to be ashamed about being a sustainable business and being a great cook that can then actually manage the figures, the budgets, the hours, the hourly rates, the penalties, and everything that goes with it. Right? So that's a learning curve for these guys to come through. I've learned that over 15, 20 years ago.
Sure. And make your fair share of mistakes along the way, no doubt. Shane, the conversation around training and with a lens on financial literacy, how does that play out in the Maha group?
It goes, I think with us, it goes back to a bit of transparency, like we were talking about before. I think in the old days, chefs wouldn't be exposed, and I suppose all hierarchy of chefs wouldn't really be exposed to the financial side of the business, and the owner would hold those cards pretty close to his, his chest. And now it's a lot more transparent. We actually want to share a lot of data with staff, and I mean, it's great that we move forward leaps and bounds, with live tracking and live data and live analytics, and they're all great measures. But I think and that's what we do, right, as hospitality operators. We control food costs, we control wage costs, we control beverage costs, they're our levers. And good operators will do that, irrespective of how much tech you've got, right? If you can do it off a spreadsheet, great. We do a report at the end of the night, which is a spreadsheet currently. It's pretty straightforward, and it says how many covers you've done, offset against budget, how much you took, a bit of a report on, Scotty came in.
But on that, Shane, and we were there up till Christmas, and we've only just moved into this new system because we've evolved as a gear, but we had multiple spreadsheets, which is clumsy, like with so many different formats and things, but the same thing until recently.
Yeah, so it's great that now we've got the opportunity to really, I suppose, close that loop with technology. But I think that, you talk about training, I think the best training parts are for us, it's stuff that's not even hospitality focused. I mean, you think about how much paper that you've got in the kitchen, putting clipboards up with how many events you've got up. We just use simple things now like a Trello board. Really straightforward, really simple, totally transparent, all your functions there, all your attachments, who the client is, what the budget is. So those old school, events meetings where it's like, Scotty, this is your event for the long grain this week, Luke, Ian, this is your event for Saloon. It's just there, you send it on and you click it, everybody can see who's done it and it's done. So training-wise, we can put training modules in there, we've got a Slack channel for all of our staff where they can see what's going on and we can communicate that way, upload tasting notes. So I found that has been really good for us. we can also send in and say, okay, this week at briefing, these are the 3 things we're going to cover, read the notes on these drinks, and then we'll have it there as a live tasting, and people can taste, and we can engage them and say, what have you learned? So it's not as if I didn't get it, I didn't read it, chef, they can actually see who's open and engage it, and we back off tips off it. You haven't opened the file, you don't get your tips. You know, if you haven't opened the file and you don't know the question, which was in the answers were in the file, you don't get the tips because you haven't put in the work. You'd be surprised when there's a bit of a financial motivation, people do their fucking job, you know?
Absolutely. No, I love that analogy. And yeah, simple tools available cloud-based, so that you can upload it somewhere centrally. And I think even from an operational point of view, you can be at home on the couch watching the footy or something. Oh, I forgot to send this out. There's an instant call.
I mean, probably the biggest thing. I mean, but the biggest thing I think with talk about training and online operational tools. The biggest thing is your CRM now, right? Because I mean, you think about the old days, you have that big restaurant book, the big black restaurant book, and the maitre d' would scribble shit. You had no data on who your customer was, and a good restaurant had a great maitre d'. Remember who you are, what you drank, what your kid's name was, your ex-wife's name, your new girlfriend's name, the whole lot. All right. But now you can actually collate that data instantaneously, right? If you've got a good link between your POS and your booking system, and then you use the CRM in the background, you can start to really chop up your database and understand who you're talking to, how you're talking to them, and when you want to talk to them. Because a blanket EDM to your whole database does nothing but get drop-offs, right? You get people leaving you and you're spending money for nothing. So we can control the levers of food cost, wage cost, beverage cost, operational cost. But it's really about getting your customers in and targeting to them, so then you can control those things. If you haven't got an audience, you've got nothing, right? So,
If you haven't got an audience, you've got nothing. I like that. Love that breakdown. Ian, so customer profiling, it's a topic that's come up through a few of our panels here today. How does that play out for you in your operations?
Like I said, we've got vegan, vegetarian, and also my other restaurant. I think...
And sorry, just on that, 20 years ago when Kelly was at the Point, and he was cooking grass-fed, grain-fed Wagyu, who the fuck would have thought that Ian Kelly was sitting here 20 years later promoting plant-based food and vegan options?
You're talking about all day.
And nobody, Kelly, you don't look like a proper...
You've got to evolve. You've got to evolve, Scott. It's like that ponytail tells me you will evolve too.
So one day I'll end up in a haircut like you, Kelly.
But your customer is... We're all just here trying to run a business. That's the thing. Like, and... You know, I use the analogy about Francois, like, all the time. That place has been there 30 years, it does what it does, it does what it says on the box. You go in there, you like going to Francois for what it is. That's for me, is the model of a restaurant. Like, Francois, it just does it, because it's done, and there it is. They don't have to market, they don't have to give away anything, it just does it. And that's what a restaurant should be. The profile of the customer, if you're good at what you do, people will come back to you. That's my belief, you know?
Well, Scott,
Just on that point, I think Francois is a great example, because it doesn't matter whether you're a classic French bistro or you're a Thai restaurant like Long Grain is, right? That's 18 years in. They are doing numbers now that they were doing 12, 14, 15 years ago, and it was a key decision for me to purchase Long Grain because it didn't require me. Yeah, because it was a brand and a name and a business that was set up. Like, I'm no master of Thai food, right? I can run an operation, I can lead the boys, we can show them a few techniques. Okay, but the red duck curry is the duck curry. Mine isn't going to be better than, you know, the Marty Boats or the boys there before.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's great, but I can show them to make sure that the duck is cooked properly, that it's seasoned properly, and then that we're good with staff. So, as you get older, taking a step back and realising that even though in my heart of hearts it's all about me, it's actually not, right? It's about Long Grain standing alone. It's its own brand. It's there. Well, yeah, maybe publicly, but financially it's fucking not going. You know, because it's all about that stuff that goes. Because the reality is that I could probably never sell a Stella, right? Because who's going to buy that off me? They're not going to buy that brand off me. That's built around me, right? You know, maybe Smith Street Bistro in 10, 15, 20 years, it's been there for 15 years, it's doing steakhouse park, it's a good business, I could sell that. Right, I could sell Long Grain. Right, I could sell Matilda in Domain Road, South Yarra. I could sell Chancery Lane because it's in, you know, the CBD legal district. Right, the Condi I could sell in 10, 15 years. Right, but no one's probably going to buy Maha after Shane. They might buy the plant and equipment, give it a few $100,000 to go. Right, but his other businesses, the same with Kells, right, they will, but there actually isn't many chefs that have an exit strategy. Right, we're all in about what we want to do, Sure. Well, my kid's going to be running a Stella in 25 years. Now, I don't know. Right, but could I sell the Conti in 10 or 15 years? Because the Connie's bigger than me. Right? That's a pub that's been there. I'm actually just a holder of that for 5, 10, 15, 20, 30 years until it just continues to grow and evolve, unlike the other restaurants. And that's really what I learned off Longrand.
Yeah, really interesting perspective to offer, being especially with Maha as a brand that's beautifully built around you, and then with the family tie-in. Is there an exit strategy or longer term play in that, or something you haven't really considered?
Yeah, property is the exit strategy. Own the freeholds. You know, don't be a slave. You know, own the freehold. Stretch yourself. You know, look, I look at 15 years in, and we, if you measure us against other restaurant groups, we should be 15 venues deep, right? We could do that, but wouldn't have owned the property along the way. But is there an exit strategy? I mean, I tend to agree with Scotty about people not wanting to buy a brand. But there is also exit strategies with a stable brand that has an identity attached to it, right? I think it's how you leverage that brand. There's opportunities, like Scotty's saying, as you start to develop a brand that's got a following, you can look at how you leverage that abroad, right? And then you license that brand. Then the core brand, and then it's a small part of something bigger, right? So then you have got an exit strategy. If you've got Maha, Tokyo, Singapore, and Chicago, well then why wouldn't somebody sweep up the whole suite of brands, including the one that you have? So how do you find that exit strategy from a cornerstone brand? I think you have to be a little bit smarter, but it's hard work and it's a long play. So is there an exit strategy? No, there's not. I mean, it's not what I'm thinking about. It's about setting up residual income from property plays. It's about making sure I've got a sustainable lifestyle and we're not spending more than we're making. But the exit strategy right now is not there for the restaurant group, no.
Yeah, no, thanks for sharing it. Really interesting.
And I know the exit strategy is 6 months. It's like if you look at Shannon for an example, right? Shannon was very, very smart, did a great job. No one was going to buy Voodoo Montague was still in Carlton Drummond, but when he's at the top of the Rialto, the brand became bigger than Shannon Bennett. Right? That's my point with Longrand. The brand might become bigger than Shannon where it is. If the stuff was in the CBD and it was a $10 million fit out, then it might be a different story for me. Right? So I think that each business is on its own merits. And look, I've picked up a couple of freeholds along the way, but I've been trying to buy both sides of Northcote off my Greek landlord for 12 years and I haven't got there yet. But I will one day. But Shane's right about that too, because you pay rent and it fucking hurts me, but I'm like, man, in 12 years I probably would have owned this business. I probably would have owned that, but it really would have stretched me at the start. But now, but I love you because you invest in your fit out, the plumbing, the mech, everything. And then in 10, 15 years time, okay, it's still an empty shell. There's great memories for me there, but what's left?
And different brands, and it really brings up, I think, a conversation there about managing multiple brands, right? So maybe a cornerstone brand, but then spin-offs from there. In different brands, do you need to shift gears when you're jumping in between different outlets?
Yeah, well, the restaurants I own in the city, they're different to the consultancies that
Absolutely.
I do with Ovolo. So in Ovolo are a hotel brand, their rooms look after everything else, food and beverage at best breaks even across the board because they don't have to pay rent and stuff like that. But the rooms are where their profit and their margin go to. So, but for the restaurants over in the city in Harbour Lane, they have to make a profit or else they'll be broke. So the thing is different. You've got better operators on the floor, people who care enough to actually turn around and make money. So, like you're saying, at the end of the day now, it's all about, you shouldn't be embarrassed about making profit. Everybody gets embarrassed about making profit. But everybody in our industry works really hard to actually have a lifestyle. And it's almost like, you still get that tall poppy thing where people will like, oh, look at him doing it. But good on people like the Chris Lucases and stuff, and Andrew McConnell will go out and invest a lot of money in staffing and training and stuff to grow a business. Now, why shouldn't we make profit?
Absolutely, no, not a dirty word at all. One of the stats that Suresh shared with us earlier from a Restaurant Catering Association survey was that 60% of owners and operators underpay themselves or don't pay themselves. 60%. It's a massive statistic. Multiple brands, Scott. So how do you shift gears, or how do you do that when you've got a sort of a long brand to jump in, Chancery Lane, when you're zipping around? Do you view it as a singular lens, or is it just a conscious decision?
No, I actually look at them individually on their own merit. So click my brain into different boxes or in different gears at different times of the day or the week, and then I try and structure my week so that I can focus maybe morning or an afternoon or where that is. So whilst all the white noise is happening daily, that's the normal kind of stuff, then I'll go, right boys, so we're working on brunch now for Matilda for this 2, 3, yeah, for me for that period. Or we're into the brunch menu phase, or I think about long grain, or I think about, you know, the interesting thing is people say, now you're busy. I'm like, well, we're up and down because when the Conti's busy, then we're a bit quieter in town. When North gets busy, so there's an interesting demographic of like different cuisines in different areas that kind of hit their kind of peak at different times. So, you know, like of course we're always busy, I think the centre every restaurant is, but the others have their ups and downs too. And you can see the financial impact already, like in interest rates going up and how that's impacted maybe like a style like a little bit. And then the Sunday roast, we're 150 for Sunday roast, but we might be a little bit quieter on the Wednesday night. Or whether Saturday nights are always evening than what we get midweek and early. So whether we look at a BYO special on the Monday nights now that we talked about before. And it took a while for the staff to actually buy into the BYO. I'm like, okay, we do 20 or 30 on a Monday night. Bring the birds in off, but that's okay. But if we bring, you know, we've done this BYO for 6 months now. Now we do 60, 70, 80 covers a night on a Monday night, and we charge like $30 corkies. I'm like, that's pure profit. All you've got to do is open that bottle and pour that in the glass really. Now to actually get $30 in the till, I just take out like a little bit over GST, that's okay. But I've got to sell a $200 bottle or a $150 bottle for that. Right?
Yeah.
And if I need 5 chefs on the Monday night for 2025, I need 5 chefs for 70. Right? I'm paying the same rent, I'm paying the same thing. So that turnover-based model's really kicking in a little bit, I think, too. And it's interesting to see the way that, you know, in the last month, Clograde's been going crazy. Now, I can't really work out that business completely why, because that's got different ups and downs. And so they all go different at different peaks and at times of the year. So we're looking at, you know, what drives that business. Is that grand final? Is that footy? Is that tennis? Is that weather? Is that events in Melbourne? Is that CBD? Is that Burb? Is that, you know, coastal? So it's interesting from an economical point of view to stand back and watch them all go.
Yeah, no, thank you very much for that, Scott. So probably the last question, we're just going to roll through this and each of you can offer a perspective on it, is, you know, running that many staff, that many emotions, that many outlets, there's a lot of responsibility and accountability. So do you feel a bit overwhelmed, and what do you do to recharge and recalibrate? Jane, thoughts?
You know, we all talk about, and it's really important to focus on, you know, mental health. I mean, mental health starts with physical health, right? You can't be mentally healthy in a mentally good space. I don't care how much you smile. You're not physically healthy, right? So I think having a good base then sets up everything else. So yes, dealing with multiple staff are going to be your biggest challenge and your biggest opportunity, right? So they're going to be the thing that keeps you up at night, the thing that you're bashing your head against the wall about, the thing that disappoints you the most. But within that, there's also the greatest opportunity to succeed. All right, so, but to be the best version of yourself, to go to attack and tackle those things with the energy that they need, you need to be physically right. I mean, I was at 6 o'clock this morning, I was at the gym, 9:30 I was at the doctor's getting a checkup. Found a heap of shit, cholesterol through the roof, blood pressure through the roof, sugar through the roof. But you know what you're fighting, right? So I think that, you know, I look back at things that we've achieved and failed in throughout our journey. You know, Providore was a success, and it was a success based on the position I was in when the pandemic happened. Right? I was at my physical, probably best state in years. Financially, we're okay. Mentally, I was good. My relationships at home were good. My relationships with my friends were really good, and I had great industry friends and relationships. So I was fucking solid. So then you can make clear, conscious, decisive decisions. And I think that's the core. And I know that I look back at times throughout my personal and professional life when I've made bad decisions. I can draw them back to me. You can kind of fade away and say, no, that wasn't my fault. But if you're really open, generally you can pull it back to yourself. There's been bad things, bad decisions happening. There's always something you can look inside about, right? So I think get yourself physically right. That can be, then that will lead onto your mental health and your mental stress and your mental happiness, whether it's speaking to a psychologist, whether it's speaking to a friend. These aren't soft things, right? We always, as girls, and I, you know, admire girls, he's been in the industry for a long time, and you know, I look up to guys like E, because he's gone through the fucking hard yards and he's been through shit. I look at Scotty as a peer and a friend, that the journey that Scotty's gone through and the battles he's had to fight. These aren't things that we should now hold as a badge of honour, but they are things to be recognised and applauded because they build resilience, they build trust, they build loyalty, but they're all for nothing unless you learn something from it. Right? So what I've learned for myself is that when I made bad decisions, when I have done things that have almost destroyed my career or life, I can always draw them back to me. And you have to own that. That's quite empowering.
Massive, massive.
Wow, well said, huh?
Thanks very much.
Well said. No, you have more therapy sessions than me, Shane. Yeah, but it's true though, no? You bring it back to basics. I think it's about being real and honest with yourself. And for me, I'm not quite as physically fit as Shane, but I've got a little bit on Kel, so I'm in the middle. But that's something that I've got to work on. Two, is take your time out for that. That's true. I mean, for me, the biggest one, and probably the only reason I'm sitting here today, is that I've been clean and sober for 12 years. I don't drink anymore, I don't do drugs, I don't do anything anymore. I've been clean and sober. That for me was a personal matter.
Massive.
That I'm kind of, that I chat about. It's not, it's not recognition or whatever it is, but if I think about what Shane just said, that for me was a big one for me to really change my personal self. I know I still make mistakes, I'm still up and down and around, but if I didn't identify that with myself, and that for me, probably going to rehab, and actually, that was the most humbling experience of my life to actually sit there and say, you know what, I can't fucking control this, and I've got a problem, and I'm going to put my hand up. Now, for an alpha male, like most cooks are, or visit, that was really, really hard, that was really difficult to do, because I was at the end. And I wouldn't, I possibly might not even be alive if I hadn't given up drinking. It's a pretty wild man. So for me, that was a big thing to actually own your mistakes, to look at it, and to make mistakes and be okay with those too, because you do it. And I will continue to make mistakes until the day that I die. If you learn from them, if you look at them and you're honest with yourself and people around, and try to get yourself in that kind of headspace where, I'm not always there. I don't like to be manic, I'd be crazy, I'd be wild, but there's times I'm really, I try to actually step out of the business, and I probably don't do it enough. I probably haven't done enough over the last 3 or 4 years, but to take that time for myself and to acknowledge and tell myself that that's okay, that it's alright to have a little bit of time off, right? A bit of me time even. Or go for a drive, go for a ride on the bike, or actually just, fucking walk and chill, but that's okay. That's a big one, because I struggle with that. I struggle not being in the restaurants, because that's how I was trained. It was,
That's what you know.
That's what I know. We're a product of our environment, so, I can't have the same expectation of the team around as I do. It's my balls on the line, literally, we're pushing everything in, and we have for years. That's okay, that's my responsibility, but how I deal with that is my personal choice.
Well said, thank you. Thanks for sharing that, Scott. And Ian, final words from you. Same question.
I just get the humbleness from my daughters because they don't give a shit. They just don't care. So that it doesn't matter what we do, what we achieve, or whatever it is. They just gonna love you for what it is. So you look at the kids and they don't say yes, chef. They just go, I don't like this. So the reality of it is like you can be at work all day, but at least when you get home, that's the real there. Because out there in the world of hospitality, like we're saying, we're opening multi-million-dollar venues. They don't care. And it's also as long as they're getting educated and going forward, it's all about the family at the end of the day. So that's for me, that's the realism just there. As long as they're happy, they're not happy.
It's all about family in the end. Ladies and gentlemen, please put your hands together. Shane, Scott, and Ian. Some open and honest conversation on the couch. Thank you very much, gentlemen. We're just going to take a 1 minute pause, and then we're going to have the fantastic Danny Bowman back on stage for the next panel. Please just discuss that with the person next to you there. Introduce yourself if you haven't already, and we'll be back in 1 minute's time ready to kick off. Thank you very much.